There is no bigger consensus in fantasy football drafts than the top 12 overall picks. As soon as best ball drafts open in May, the same names make up the first round all summer long. But when we sit back in December and January, we know that the season never ends up in that way. So today, Hayden and I are going to both list how we would rank the top 15 overall picks in drafts this summer.
Yeah, it's like the truth serum. It's not going like trying to even out our exposures. These are the guys. If we're drafting in one league, this is how they would go. This is kind of half PPR, but I'm kind of breaking ties in favor of the wide receivers and the PPR bros.
Just as much as we love talking about sleepers, we have episodes on those and our favorite mid-round selections. You kind of need to nail your first two rounds and specifically the first round of your fantasy draft. And we thought about a few different ways of doing this. We're not averaging these. It's actually going to be our own individual lists. It's very easy, I think, to get kind of take locked into groupthink with these top 12 names over and over and over again. It's kind of difficult to be individualistic with the first round, but looking at both of our lists, we are absolutely going to do that today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, last year the highest advance rate guy was a first round player, Jamar Chase, and the lowest advance rate player was also in round one in Christian McCaffrey. So boom or bust round one.
All right, we'll go back and forth here. Who is the number one player on your board for 2025 fantasy football drafts?
Jamar Chase, he's the 101 on Underdog Fantasy. Last year, 51% of people that drafted Jamar Chase finished in first or second place in their regular season drafts. He won the Triple Crown at wide receiver. Nothing's really changed at all here, so I'm keeping this one moving.
He's also my first pick. He's being selected as the first pick. We are not starting off with the bang here. He averaged 3.7 more points per game than the wide receiver two last season. I mean, think about how many weeks you have in your home leagues that come down to just 3.7 points difference. He's giving you that advantage on a weekly basis. We know he led the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns. I believe he did it in a few different other categories like red zone targets, end zone targets on top of that. He's the wide receiver one on any given week three times last year. In those weeks, Hayden, and this is really what makes him different than all the other wide receivers on the board. He scored 36, 50, and 38 half PPR points. So again, in those contests on any given week, he wins you your matchup, point blank,
Yep.
period.
Yeah, I have this very similar stat. The top five scores over the last two seasons, he's averaging 39 points. The next closest is down at 33. So he's the spike week king.
And last year we saw with no Tyler Boyd, he played a career high 32.2% of his snaps from the slot. That was even with T. Higgins missing a handful of contests. If T. Higgins plays 17 games this season, I would expect him to have that number go up even more. And we love that versatility of the inside to outside player. Okay, from here on out, will be a little bit different. Who is your second ranked player in drafts this summer?
This might be a surprise, but CD Lamb is my number two
Wow.
player here. Over the last two seasons, CD Lamb is the wide receiver one overall in half PPR points per game. That's even more than Jamar Chase. And that also includes the games that Dak Prescott has missed. He's an elite wide receiver. He's in the best role, inside outside versatility. The George Pickens trade, I think, is actually going to help out CD Lamb because he's actually going to move the chains, but he's not a volume hog. He's going to get those 50-50 balls where CD Lamb's the chain mover. If you look at the depth chart right now, the running back group is disgusting. We have Dak Prescott healthy. You've added some offensive linemen. And now I think this team's going to look around and say, hey, we're just trying to pass this ball all over the yard. And by the way, Brian Schottenheimer, he's been the Dallas offensive coordinator for the last two seasons when CD Lamb has been the wide receiver one overall. And the last note here, and I found this digging up the last second, the last games this schedule, December, at Detroit versus Minnesota versus the Chargers and at Washington. Those are all high scoring games. Three of those four games are also domes. So by the end of the season here, I think CeeDee Lamb's going to be finishing on a really high note.
CeeDee Lamb is my sixth ranked player, so a bit further down the list for me. The wide receiver 10 in points per game last year. As we know, Dak only played in eight contests. He was the wide receiver two in points per game the year prior to that. Finally, Dak Prescott played in every single game. Then the year before that, he was the wide receiver eight when Dak missed 5 games. So if we get Dak Prescott as the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys for 17 games this season, it's going to be a top two, top three scoring season here for CD Lamb. I mean, last year is just the difference in how the offense is being called and more layups and gimmies for him. His depth of target went from 8.6 yards down the field when Dak was at quarterback to 7.0 yards without him. I think CD Lamb is just an incredible player. And while it might be an opinion from many people on the outside, many of our viewers, that the George Pickens might lower his value. I'm with you in the fact that it might actually increase it from a team standpoint, open up more blades of grass, more of it to be defended on the outside is like the sacrificial X type of stuff, and
Yep.
allow just CeeDee Lamb to work in this cavity of space in the middle of the field.
Yeah, I just want the chains to be moving. I don't want the Cowboys punting. I think that George Pickens gonna keep those chains moving, and then all of a sudden, if the Cowboys are back to top 5 in scoring, which they have been multiple times throughout Dak's career, then all of a sudden CeeDee Lamb has wide receiver 1 overall in his range of outcomes.
Okay, let's get spicy. My number 2 player is Bijan Robinson.
Wow.
He averaged 14 and a half carries on a 56% carry share over his first 8 games of last season. Then in the final 9, it went to the absolute moon in terms of usage. 21 carries per game and 65% share of that backfield. Uh, Final 12 weeks, again, scored at least as the running back 11 or better 10 times. He handled 73% of the backfield opportunities over the final 9 games. He was the running back 1 overall in expected points over the final 9 games. We kind of got 2 portions of the season last year. Kirk Cousins, a stable quarterback for a good portion, and then the final few games, it was an absolute travesty of what he kind of turned this offense into. They didn't have an identity series to series, and then really in the final 3-ish games, Michael Penix comes in, and it's a fireworks show. It's a bit high variance on top of it, but in that same moment when their future quarterback became the present, Zach Robinson, an offensive coordinator coming from the Sean McVay tree, really leaned on Bijan Robinson as the identity of this team. I think he's going to continue to do that from week 1 and out, and I think Bijan ends this season as the running back 1 overall in points.
He's my RB3. It's my 6th overall player. Last year, he was the RB4 in half PPR points per game. That's in a season where he handled 70% of the inside the 5-yard line opportunities. That was the 8th highest rate in the NFL. He caught 61 passes, averaged almost 5 yards per carry. Those are all like really, really strong numbers. So I'm looking for ways how Bijan Robinson can take that next jump. Like maybe he just averages 5.5 yards per carry, but they have a new center. The real thing is the Falcons just have to be a better offense. Like they cannot just be like a league average offense. He has to be, they kind of have to graduate one tier. So it's kind of a bet on Michael Penix to be much better than what Kirk Cousins is. And I'm a little bit wishy-washy with that. So I have no bad notes to say about Bijan Robinson. This first round is completely stacked here. He's just one of the guys where I was like, looking to find what's that last missing ingredient to kind of vault him to be like the guy you needed this year. And that requires Michael Penix to be a stud. I'm just not sure if I'm going to get there.
I think this offensive line is really talented as well. That kind of goes under the radar when talking about this group in comparison to others. And to me, Michael Penix just equals a better offense, and that equals more points scored for the Atlanta Falcons, and that should mean more points scored for Bijan. And he kind of just moves differently than a lot of the other ball carriers out there in the NFL. Almost teleports a couple clicks every single time on these jump cuts that he has. It's We haven't seen the peak season yet for Bijan Robinson, and I feel like we have seen it for a number of these other still very good but older running backs that he's kind of being listed or drafted among. And I think that's going to happen here in 2025. He is the 3rd overall pick right now, and now is being selected as the first running back off the board on Underdog.
Yeah, my 3rd ranked player is Saquon Barkley, and it's Bijan versus Saquon Barkley, and these guys are kind of going back and forth in ADP. Obviously, the Saquon season last year finished with the most points over replacement and half PPR scoring. He absolutely lit it up. The only concerns that you can have really is just the volume that he had last year. We're talking about 482 touches, including the Super Bowl run that he had. Most of the backs that have that many touches, which is, by the way, the second most since the year 2000, only behind DeMarco Murray there. A lot of missed games. Now, that said, whenever Saquon Barkley's out there, he will be the RB1 or close to it. The offensive line looks very strong once again. He was ripping off all those touchdowns. The defense is still really good. The offensive line created the most yards before contact over any running back position out there. So, yeah, there's nothing bad to say about Saquon Barkley. So I'm just kind of repeating what happened last year, and he's my 3rd overall player.
Just how I'm ranking all these guys, I have the 1 wide receiver at the top, and then a chunk of 4 running backs, and then the next wide receiver. And so Saquon Barkley is also my number 3 player for drafts this summer, including the playoffs. This is one of the crazier stats that I found out when researching for the show. Including the playoffs, Saquon had long runs of 78, 72, 70, 68, 65, 62, 60, 59, 55, 41, 39, 38, and 34 yards. 8 of those went for touchdowns. He had
Yep.
11 total touchdowns of 20 plus yards, just 3 touchdowns that went from the 10 to 19-yard range, and just 6 touchdowns of 1 to 4 yards. I mean, that means Hayden, he had more 20 plus yard touchdowns than he did of any from 0 to 19 yards. That is crazy. Now, I know many of you at home are using Hayden's favorite word here. That means just regression is going to hit. My comment to that would be that if he doesn't score from far out, then he's going to be more likely to score from close up. Like, he just took those opportunities away. If we can rewind to last season for the Eagles, at times, even though they won the Super Bowl, at times their offense kind of stalled for multiple series. And it got to a point where they just were waiting for Saquon Barkley to have a 40 plus yard gain or a 40 plus yard touchdown. And he provided that. He can still do that because he is sick at breaking angles. And this is an amazing offensive line for run blocking. And that combination we just saw flourish last year. So I think he's going to be close to repeating it. I just hesitate just a little bit to one of the first points that you made of when we've seen guys with 400 plus touches, the only one to repeat as a 20 plus point per game guy was LaDainian Tomlinson back in 2007. That stat comes from our buddy Ron Stewart.
Yeah, the thing though is when these guys do stay healthy the next year, they're like the guys that you absolutely needed. So I think
And
like
Saquon can easily be that.
the floor is lower because of the touches he has, but the ceiling is also there because look just what happened this last season.
Yeah, like, I joked on this very show last year when he was being selected, I think, as the 21st overall player on Underdog, and I had him ranked, I think, like 13th, that he just needed to be a couple yards better than DeAndre Swift, who led the NFL in being tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line. That can just happen this year if he doesn't score
Yeah.
these long ass touchdowns every single
Yep.
week because he still tied Jalen Hurts in terms of percent of team carries inside the 10-yard line. That dropped a little bit inside the 5-yard line, but he can still just be a couple yards better than DeAndre Swift. Last year was about 30 yards better than DeAndre
Yeah, I was gonna
Swift.
say
And
70, 74, 78. You listed it.
so I'm once again all in on Saquon, and I'm happy to take him at his current ADP is actually a 4, so I'm ahead of market on him right now.
Alrighty. Should we go to number 4?
Let's go to number 4. Who is it for you?
I got Puka Nakua here. He's the 7th or 8th overall pick on Underdog Fantasy, but man, he's played 28 games, and when he's out there for actually a bulk of the games where he's always battling injuries here, he's averaging 98 yards per game in the games he played more than 75% of the snaps. Last season, he led the NFL in yards per route run at 3.2. I comped him to kind of like a Gen Z Larry Fitzgerald. He can do everything. He catches 2.2 targets behind the line of scrimmage and then 7.7 beyond it. He's just like the guy for this entire offense here. So you bring in Devontae Adams, which I actually think is going to mean Puka Nakua is going to play more slot snaps out there. But what's so crazy about this is even though that he's been a big yardage guy, he hasn't been a big touchdown guy yet. Like there's just no way that 3.3% touchdown rate is going to continue moving forward. If that regresses back to league average, was at 4.5, or if it goes up to where all the other elite wide receivers are at 5, 6, 7%, there's a chance that Puka Nakua could finish as the wide receiver 1 overall this year. So he's the guy after doing all of the notes for the show where you just kind of realize like the upside case is so obvious. It's sitting right in front of us. The prime of his career, great coaching staff, very versatile option, and then a positive regression is expected this season.
I do have Puka slightly lower than you as my 8th overall player, and he's being selected 7th right now on Underdog. The big point is what you brought up. We just haven't seen that massive touchdown season yet for him. You would just naturally think for how good he is, that is going to happen. But if we look over the last 2 years, and just the vast majority of receiving touchdowns are scored inside the red zone, he only had 6 of those. Cooper Kupp had 8. Demarcus Robinson had 8. Again, we asked Matt Harmon, and you did the show with him as well, when we talked about all these year 3 wide receivers, if there's something in Puka's game that just hasn't allowed him to explode, and it's most likely just going to happen at some point, it just hasn't yet. It just hasn't yet. But again, he led all wide receivers with a target on 37% of his routes. That's the highest rate for a wide receiver running 100 plus routes in a season over the past 10 years. I'm excited to see what this offense does. Uh, I'm just slightly lower than you on Puka right now.
The Rams project for the 10th most points, if you're looking at the future lines here, right next to the Cincinnati Bengals. So, yeah, touchdowns will be coming for Puka Nakua. What a special talent.
Yeah, I mean, he's so powerful. That is the first word that always comes to mind when you watch Puka Nakua. Uh, he uses his hands to gain that leverage advantage. He's so good on screens too. Those small movements at that tackle point forces defenders to miss on those lunging ones. And I do think part of the massive underlying stats for him last year was that Cooper Cup was on the decline so significantly. You and I don't think Devontae Adams is on that decline as much, but at the same time, you could easily see this team, throwing a bit more inside of the red zone than they did running the football inside the red zone over the last 2
Yep.
seasons.
Yeah, I think the Rams, they kinda hit a lull in the middle of that season last year, because the offensive line was really banged up too. So, we've seen Matthew Stafford with a healthy offensive line play top 5, football. So if we kinda get the whole package together here, watch out.
I'm ready to make a big statement. My 4th player is Christian McCaffrey.
Mm,
Christian McCaffrey, CMC, as the number 4 player right now. He already climbed 3 spots up to the 8th overall ADP right now in Underdog, and I already have him 4 spots above that. So we'll see what happens in these next 2-ish months ahead of the season. Look, the number one talking point, especially if you draft him with the 101 last year, is just injuries. How is that going to impact us? Because we know last year you played in just 4 games. Prior to that, in 2023, he played 16 games and was the running back one in points scored. Then he played 17 games in 2022, was the running back two in points per game, and then played in just 7 games in 2021 and was the running back eight in points per game. So, again, if you were bitten by the calf ish injury that we got last year, I want to rewind 365 days ago and say that at this point, we knew that he was injured heading into training camp and the preseason and the regular season. We just didn't know the extent of it. The 49ers were being very shady with all of that. What we know right now, sitting here in early July, is that he is healthy. He is participating in all offseason activities and drawing, I would say, great reviews for it. Plus, this 49ers team has an excellent schedule. So I want to draft as if I'm going to win fantasy football this year. And if we get 15 plus games of Christian McCaffrey, what we know with him in a 49ers uniform is a top two scorer at the position. And that's why I want to be overweight on Christian McCaffrey in 2025.
I got Christian McCaffrey 8th overall, which I think is gonna be higher than a lot of people in the
Ooh.
comment section want to rank him, but I see it the same way. Like, if you wanna come in first place in your league, you roll the dice on Christian McCaffrey, and then the second there's, training camp injury, news, then we can remove him from our draft list then. But since his 2018 breakout, Christian McCaffrey is the owner of the 1st, 3rd, 12th, and 18th highest single season half PPR points among running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Nobody has been better since we've been doing this podcast at scoring fantasy points than Christian McCaffrey. He's 29 years old, but like you said, he's out there practicing way, way, way before training camp. They feel good about it. He flew overseas to get that leg fixed, and right now, I think that he's healthy, and you win first place whenever Christian McCaffrey is healthy. So I think at some point it's worth the risk.
And we've talked about in previous years when Brandon Ayuk went down or Debo Samuel went down, then those could be nuclear games for Christian McCaffrey. Uh, Almost certainly, neither of those players are going to be on the field at full strength to open this season, and one of them isn't even on the roster
Yeah.
anymore. And when CMC, off of this extended layoff last year, re entered the 49ers depth chart and roster, Kyle Shanahan showed his hand. He gave him 90.5% and 85% of the backfield touches, over 100 yards from scrimmage in each of those two contests that he played with Brock Purdy. Like, I am not scared of Isaac Guerrero taking away snaps from a healthy Christian McCaffrey or whoever the hell else is the new flavor of the season for Kyle Shanahan and the recycling of the backup running backs. If Christian McCaffrey practices and is starting, Christian McCaffrey is going to get the lion's share of the backfield work on the easiest schedule in the NFL on an offense and a play caller that we've already seen him being a top two scorer in 2 consecutive seasons. And that's why this is my like point to right center field and a home run swing that I'm
Yeah.
willing to take. And I do wonder the closer that we get, Hayden, to the regular season, if this kind of becomes consensus, because he's already flipped with someone like Ashton Genty in terms of individual spots in the first round right now.
If he's healthy on Labor Day, he will be ranked higher than 8th overall on my board. So let's just take this one day at a time.
All right, before we move any further, just two challenges for all of you. We are trying to hit 150,000 subscribers on the channel ahead of week one. We appreciate every single one of you that have watched and joined this channel over the last few weeks, the last few months. It is totally free for you to hit that subscribe button, leave us a thumbs up, and definitely a comment down below. We would love to hear and read your top 12 lists for the first round as well. And most importantly, we have launched channels on social media. Instagram, if you're over on there, it is UD Football Show. The link in the description down below. But if you're on your phone right now listening or watching on your computer, just going over to Instagram and follow us. Give us a follow over on UD Football Show. We have some original content there that you can't even get here. Fifth player that should be drafted in the first round. Who is it?
I got Jahmyr Gibbs at 5th overall here. Only Saquon, Derrick Henry averaged more half PPR points per game this last season, and there's obviously many ways where this thing can get even higher than that. Jahmyr Gibbs could be just the starter over David Montgomery. That was not the case this last season. They could not split the workload at the goal line 50-50. Or even better than that, David Montgomery just misses some time this season, and all of a sudden Jahmyr Gibbs will be the RB1 in projections for that week. The only negatives that you can kind of bring up with Jahmyr Gibbs right now is just a little bit of regression for the Lions. Last year, the Lions scored 49 more points than the second best team in the NFL. Last year, we're not expecting that to hold up. There's been some interior offensive line changes. I would say straight up downgrades this season. But for the most part, when everyone is just ready to go, this Lions offense is going to be top 5 in the league. I think that the Jahmyr Gibbs split over David Montgomery is going to grow year after year. And I say this as a huge David Montgomery fan, but Jahmyr Gibbs has earned every single right to make this closer to a 75-25 instead of a
Ooh.
50-50 split. I think if the Lions are struggling whatsoever this season, they're just going to spam Jahmyr Gibbs the football because that works.
Jahmyr Gibbs is also my fifth overall player. This is the fourth of the four running backs in a row I have after Jamar Chase. Uh, this is one of the best, and again, random stats that I've come across this summer. It's from our buddy Ryan Heath over at Fantasy Points. On early down, so first and second down, Jahmyr Gibbs actually had a higher yards per target than Amon-Ra St. Brown did last year. 8.8 to 8.76. So then you also get all of the rushing work on top of that. If I can just quickly move over to the downside, it's not necessarily a downside when looking at it across the league. It's just difficult to compare any offense to what the 2024 Detroit Lions put out there on the field. They were number one in points per game scored, as you pointed out last year, at 33. Right now, they're projected for the third most at
Yeah.
25.3. I mean, that's a difference of nearly 8 points per game. They also had the third best percentage of red zone touchdown success in the NFL last year. Things really have changed. Like you said, one of the best play callers, play designers has moved on from Ben Johnson to the Chicago Bears. I understand if the new guy is going to use the same playbook, but you and I watch these games on a weekly basis. That doesn't mean he can be as creative right on a you know, napkin, something that no other team is running in the league. They're not going to weaponize snap counts as well as Ben Johnson has done in the past, just constantly putting defenses on their heels. So while the plays might be the same, I think the play sequencing might be a little bit different. And yeah, losing Frank Ragnow is, I think, going to be pretty significant.
Yeah.
And the jump that we saw with Jahmyr Gibbs when he was the lead running back without Dave Montgomery, I think he was at 27.4 points per game. Then playing alongside him, that was down to 16.9. It is a pretty staggering difference.
Yep.
But if something ever does happen to our beloved Demont, then you almost certainly have the running back one in the NFL.
Yeah, we have like basically the same notes. I think that the Lions will be worse and Gibbs will play more. And I'm willing to find out. Maybe we get lucky where the Lions are still the best offense in the league and Gibbs plays more. And then congrats, you have a very good chance of winning your league in that scenario.
Who is your sixth player?
This is where I had Bijan. I think that you had CeeDee Lamb here.
Yes, I have CeeDee Lamb here, so we have covered both of those notes. The only thing that I will add on CeeDee Lamb is, and I sent this to producer Weave, so I'm sure he's thrown it on the screen because he's the absolute best, is that Dak Prescott is already on the record this summer stating how working in the offseason with CeeDee Lamb is going to put them on a better page from week one versus we got the CeeDee Lamb holdout last year. We
That's
got it with
right.
Brandon Ayuk too. We got it with like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and that impacts some players versus others. For Dak Prescott, it was, quote, credit this past trip that we just had for one, but you've got to credit the offseason and the lack of contract negotiations. He even alluded to that in just some conversations about how much better it feels. It's a business that last year nothing was personal from anybody, but he wanted to be involved and he just couldn't. So
Yep.
again, C Lamb, very good, but just being at his absolute peak in the connection with hopefully a healthy quarterback for a very long time. The range of outcome is easily wide receiver one overall and the number one player in fantasy football.
Yeah, love it. And my last one for CeeDee Lamb, the projected pace from establish the run, they have the Cowboys as a winner in that category. This team's going to play extremely fast. So this could just be one of these like play volume years for the Dallas Cowboys.
Who is your seventh player?
I got Justin Jefferson. Sadly, he goes like second or third overall, but
Second right now.
yeah, I just have a couple concerns about what I'm looking at with this Minnesota Vikings offense after the Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold years. It's just a question mark with the quarterback play. Now, with significantly worse quarterbacks, Justin Jefferson's been a total stud, so he's not going to flat out bust here. But if we're going to nitpick, he only averaged 90 receiving yards per game last year. And I think the big difference, not just the quarterback downgrade here, but also like Jordan Addison's like fully broken out. TJ Hawkins is going to be ready to go. They've invested into a second running back as well. So there's just like more target competition in general from this version of the Minnesota Vikings than there were previously. And I think if you look at some of the offseason moves, I wonder if this team wants to be a little bit more balanced and not so pass heavy and downfield pass heavy. So yeah, nothing against Justin Jefferson. He's probably the best receiver, him and Jamar Chase. But I'm just a little bit more nervous about what the range of outcomes could be for the Minnesota Vikings versus all the guys that we kind of listed ahead.
I also have Justin Jefferson at 7, per Jared Smola. Justin Jefferson's 2.5 yards per route run last year was a career low. That's still ranked 5th best among
Yeah.
84 qualifying wide receivers in the NFL. It is funny, you look at a bunch of, like, career low marks just in totality for Justin Jefferson, yet they still rank top 5 in every single category across the league. It just speaks to how freaking good he is. Kevin O'Connell is also really good. I'm intrigued to see how not having Sam Darnold and pivoting over to JJ McCarthy, if that changes how Kevin O'Connell wants to approach the season from an offensive schematic standpoint. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember Nick Mullins dropping back 44, 36, and 33 times as a filling quarterback for, I believe, Kirk Cousins at the time. What I do really appreciate with JJ McCarthy, even if he isn't launching those downfield missiles like Sam Darnold did last year, but he is so good at attacking the middle of the field, unafraid of throwing in that area. And then when he was coming out, his 3rd and 5 plus real, like gotta have it situations, arguably was like the best cut up of
Yep.
any quarterback in that class. Like always throwing beyond the sticks, always making the right reads, knowing where to go to the football, and navigating pressure. So I am optimistic of JJ McCarthy. I just also am wondering if they do want to run the football a little bit more with the improved interior offensive line and obviously making the move for Jordan Mason on top of it.
Yeah, then JJ McCarthy at Michigan, it was a very balanced team over there. He's coming off of 2 knee surgeries as well. And the way they kind of just like treat JJ McCarthy publicly is like a little bit on my radar. But the Justin Jefferson like stats by himself, he's the NFL's all-time leader in receiving yards per game at 96.
Yep.
All time, like think about Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, all these guys, Justin Jefferson's number one overall. So if there's gonna be someone that can overcome any of these weaknesses that we're talking about, it's Justin Jefferson. Like my other note here is just like this first round is so stacked. I feel so confident all these guys that like Justin Jefferson being 7th this year. He could have been the 3rd or 4th player in my rankings in previous seasons.
I think one difference, we obviously have a major difference versus the public out there taking him as the 2nd overall player right now on Underdog. But you have Puka Nakua higher. I have Puka Nakua 1 spot later. It goes back just the touchdowns for me. Again, it wouldn't shock me at all if Puka Nakua blows out with touchdowns this year. But Justin Jefferson had more touchdowns last season than Puka Nacua has had so far in his NFL career so
Yep.
far combined in what 28 games. So the touchdown score, we know Justin Jefferson has that in his back pocket and has already done it and can repeat that. That is still something to figure out with Puka Nacua, who is my eighth overall player. Who was your eighth overall again?
I got Christian McCaffrey here, so we got the
Okay.
same top 8.
Yep. Yes, we do. Okay. So if we have the top eight together, which by the way, you can all be drafting on the dog app right now over on Underdog. If you've never played best ball, this is the perfect time to do it. Not only can you go out and win, thousands and thousands or millions of dollars by playing freaking fantasy football, it also is the perfect way to prepare you for your home leagues. Again, we always talk about best ball. You've heard about best ball. If you've never done it, this is the time to do it. Use promo code the show. We'll throw some bonus credits in your direction, a pick 'em special on top of it, especially if you live in the great states of Missouri, Georgia, California, and Texas. Don't wait. Do it tonight. Do it right now and play best ball on Underdog. Let's get spicy. I think 9 through 15 ish could be quite different for me and you. Who's your ninth overall player?
This is a shot that I'm calling. I got Devon A-Chain ranked
Woo! I
ninth
love it.
overall here. He's my RB5. He's got it done in 2 different ways. Like the first year, it was a home run derby, 7.8 yards per
100%.
carry, had 67, 76-yard touchdowns. Last year, the numbers dropped because the offensive line couldn't block anybody. But then he goes out there and wins the running back receiving triple crown, catching 78 passes, 6 touchdowns, almost 600 receiving yards there. If you only look at the 11 healthy Tua Tagovailoa games this last year, Devon Achane averaged 19.3 half PPR points per game. That was with one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. By the way, that number would have only trailed Saquon Barkley this last season. The offensive line, while not great, it does look a little bit better. They're at least trying. Second
Yep.
rounder from the previous season is going to step in at left tackle and Patrick Paul. They signed James Daniels for left guard. They draft a second rounder to play right guard here. So I just seen Devon Achane like win this with like explosive plays, and I've also seen him win with receptions. I think that the Jonnu Smith trade is a big one because that was 20% target share, and they kind of win in similar areas here. So like man, like I'm kind of playing this where if the Dolphins like go back to where they were in like what 2022, 2023, I think
Totally.
Devon Achane can finish as the RB1 overall. So like to me, this is just like an upside shot here. I know this thing can completely fall apart here, but like I got to go beat those like Jameer Gibbs teams, those Saquon teams at the top of this thing. I got to shoot for the moon here, and I think that he's your answer.
This is frustrating because on June 2nd, I posted on Twitter, quote, I am relentlessly drafting Devon Achan in round two, which by the way, at that point, he was like the 16th,
Yep.
17th, 18th overall pick. He's now climbed to the 15th overall spot. I have been well informed that in our fantasy football bubble, I am known as the Devon Achan guy. And now, Hayden, you've just like totally usurped me, ranking him as the ninth overall player because I thought I was being aggressive having him as a 12th player. And I can still exit every single draft that I enter
Mhm.
with Devon Achan as the 12th overall player. I'm totally with you. And I had the exact same notes over the last 2 years. In 2023, NFL record 7.8 yards per carry on one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. He was a running back 4 in points per game on 13.4 touches per game. All right. But then he became more of like a volume hog in 2024 because the offensive line, as you alluded to, could not block. So that shifted to 16 plus touches per game, nearly 5 catches per contest. Our buddy Ian Harditz pointed out that 58% of Devon Achan's fantasy production was through the passing game. He was legit running downfield routes. I mean, he had 34 receptions when lined up for the slot or out wide. The next running back closest to that was at 15. And so, what you and I are simply asking for is one, Tua needs to stay healthy for this to work because when he does, Devon Achane is a top 3 or 4 scoring running back at the position. But then also, we want Mike McDaniel just to basically blend the last 2 seasons. And he can create explosives as a ball carrier, and then he can also be a volume receiver on top of it. And that basically makes him matchup independent. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what situation he's in. He's either going to run the football or catch passes from behind. And that is exactly what we want. That is the formula that we want for fantasy football picks.
And I'm gonna write up a whole thing on these defenses, but the Dolphins' defense is gonna be one of the biggest pass funnels we've seen the last couple years. Their starting corners without Jalen Ramsey are just ridiculous. Like Storm Duck, like this seems like a Chat GPT secondary. Meanwhile, their defensive line could really kick ass. That's what you want if you have players on fantasy. You want their defense to be able to just like give up big explosives through the air and not bleed out the clock against the run. So I think that the Miami Dolphins are going to have a lot of play volume this year. So that's stock up for Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, and Jalen Waddle.
Okay, so we are at number 9. I have a different running back ahead. I have Ashton Genty here, and this is 2 spots above ADP at 11 overall. He's dropped 3 spots since June 1st, again, basically flip-flopped with Christian McCaffrey. Um, First, let's zoom out and look at the new look Las Vegas Raiders. Chip Kelly's offenses, when he was in charge in the NFL, uh, went from 4th to 3rd to 13th to 27th in points scored. So again, that range from 3rd to 27th most high powered scoring offenses in the league. Yet his rushing attempts basically stayed the same. That went from 4th to 7th to 11th to 5th across the board. So we know he wants to run the football. And so their investment with a top 10 selection in Ashton Genty totally makes sense. What we love about him, if we zoom in on the individual, is that he has tremendous run stamina. I mean, the broken tackles that he had on singular runs for multiple times allowed him to have those 40, 50, 60-yard runs versus where other guys might break a tackle, then be, dragged down 10 yards later. And it wasn't just on those individual runs. He was then able to stack those multiple times per game, where many other of his peers just had a handful of those in an entire season. He had just highlight reels in every single contest. Plus, I think he has great hands. We've seen highlights of him catching actual legit downfield vertical passes in OTAs and minicamp. So I think that in many ways it's going to be a Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty offense. And I'm willing to take that volume plus his explosiveness here at the 9th overall selection.
Yeah, I mean, what a total stud here. I don't have him inside my top 15,
Wow.
but that's only just because looking at what Las Vegas is projected to score, they're projected for the 27th most points this year. Now, you can sell me on Geno Smith and Chip Kelly outproducing that. I'm a big Geno Smith guy, but kind of like a very similar discussion as the Saquon Barkley one. Like he also had almost 400 touches last year, then had to do all of the offseason stuff that rookies have to do. So you're just adding a little bit of like a kind of a touch, like rookie year kind of wall scenario here. The offensive line, I think, is pretty below average. Their left tackle wants more money, so we'll see what happens there. So yeah, in terms of like Ashton Genty by himself, total stud. Is he going to get the ball a ton? Awesome, yes. I just think that some of the other running backs ahead of him are just on teams that are projected to score like a full touchdown more. Like I think even like Josh Jacobs, like he had 300 carries and 15
Wow.
touchdowns. Like that's kind of what we're hoping for with Ashton Genty here. So that's like the one like fade I would have in round one would be Ashton
Hmm.
Genty. And it's like nothing to do with himself.
Yeah, there is a bit of a mystery box element to this where you can say to yourself, what if Ashton Genty scores what Derrick Henry did last year as the running back 2 in points per game? Meanwhile, you can just draft Derrick Henry as
Correct.
the running back 6 a few picks after Ashton Genty if you wanted to do that. And I hear you on the downside outcome when it comes to the team as a whole. They're projected for the 6th fewest points in the NFL this year. But to me, like the more that the Raiders surprise the NFL this year, the more Ashton Genty can continue to climb
Oh
up.
yeah.
It's weird talking about tiers in round 1, but like I said, I have those 4 running backs in a row from 2, 3, 4, 5, and so he's kind of in a tier of his own in the next grouping, but still in the top 12 overall for me.
Yeah, I see it kind of similarly. Like a lot of my next players are wide receivers, and I did that on purpose just because I feel really strong about some of the wide receiver values, like your Chuba Hubbard's in round five, like Alvin Kamara goes really late. Some pick a running back rookie flyer, where I wanted to make sure I'm walking away with one of these kind of stud wide receivers in the first 2 rounds.
Maybe that is a hint of who your 10th player is.
It's Amon-Ra St. Brown here. Back-to-back wide receiver 4 overall per game finishes in half PPR scoring. Obviously, in full PPR, that might even go higher than that. And he's kind of done it in 2 different ways as well. 10 targets per game back in 2023, like a complete volume hog. This last year, targets go down, but then he scores a touchdown in 8.5% of his targets. Just to put that in perspective, Puka Nacua at 3.5% career-wise. So I think that if the Lions kind of take a step back in terms of the overall scoring, which I obviously am expecting, Amon-Ra's not gonna score as many touchdowns at the same exact time. When the offense was 3rd in scoring the couple seasons ago, he catches 10 targets per game here. So I don't see how this one can go really sideways. If the offensive line is a problem for Jared Goff, what do? You throw the ball underneath to Jahmyr Gibbs and to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, like, these are the 2 guys I feel most comfortable with. I think that if the Lions take a really big step back, that's gonna come at the expense of the Jameson Williams, the David Montgomerys, the Sam Laportas. These 2 guys are completely insulated, so I feel great about them.
Okay, question to you, because I know all of the wide receivers that you listed ahead of him, you could see an outcome where they are the wide receiver 1 in points per game. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's even some wide receivers that you list after Amon-Ra
Mhm.
St. Brown that you think have a higher likelihood than ARSB to be the wide receiver 1 in points per
Yep.
game, correct?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think it's just you don't have to have the wide receiver 1 overall to
Right.
win your league,
That's
and
just
if
absolute ceiling,
you
basically,
right.
conversation.
And I know that he's gonna be a top 8 guy at the position, and if you're at the turn and you hit on your early 2nd round pick here, then all of a sudden you could have 2 powerhouses. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that factored into my thinking a little bit more than yours, because I have a couple wide receivers in this next grouping ahead of him. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but that's why he's my 13th overall player on this
Mhm.
list. He is, again, is so vital to this team. He is the metronome. He's so tough. He doesn't miss time. I say that now that he's coming off of off-season knee surgery that we know zero details of. They haven't been disclosed at all, but all reports indicate that he's going to be good to go for training camp. But like you said, man, I mean, he's the 6th highest share of red zone targets across the league. He's gone anywhere in the last 3 years from wide receiver 10 to wide receiver 4 to wide receiver 5 in points per game. But just as I kind of docked Jahmyr Gibbs from, this team scoring 33 points last year per game down to
Mhm.
projected 25 this year, I think that's naturally going to impact someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown too. So I have a two, again, maybe home run shot type players ahead
Yeah.
of him at the position.
Yeah, these next wide receivers, it's extremely close, but you feel good about all of them.
Well, that brings me to my 10th player, and that's Malik Neighbors. Just one spot after where he is being selected an underdog right now. He finishes the wide receiver 8 in points per game as a rookie, and that's including this like dismal stretch from week 7 to week 14. He scored as the wide receiver 39 in points per game. He was like constantly hitting that 10 points per game mark, but we know why that happened. They had no left tackle and even less quarterback play than that. It was just backups to backups to backups. The offense could not function at all. At the very least, I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson fan, but that's an improvement. Like, he doesn't attack every area of the field, but he is going to allow us to have those top ceiling games and peak performances from Malik Neighbors on a weekly basis. And then if he's not cutting it, then Jackson Dart's absolutely going to get an opportunity to prove it himself. So, I mean, Malik Neighbors, and if we look at like early downs, which to me is when a play caller kind of stretches what exactly they want the offense to be. He led the league with 33% of his team's targets there. So we know he can win it on vertical routes, and we know he can win it as an individual after the catch, and just an awesome, awesome player. That's why I have him 10th overall.
Malik Neighbors is my 11th overall player, and I really
There we
wanted to
go.
push him higher. Last year was the wide receiver 7 per game in a team that was 31st in scoring. He is a complete volume dominant player in full PPR leagues. I would move him higher than this 11th overall ranking here. I think Russell Wilson is like significantly better than all these guys, and not
Great.
just that. It's Andrew Thomas missed a bunch of time last year as well. Their left tackle is one of the best in the game. So to me, like watching all the Malik Neighbors stuff, you can see how explosive and how dominant he was last year. And at the same time, I also thought there was like very clear spots for him to actually get better, specifically his like feel for zone coverage. And then also all those downfield looks, those would just always go incomplete. Last year, Russell Wilson was 2nd in PFF grade on throws beyond 10 plus air yards. So you can talk about the sacks and all the other stuff with Russell Wilson. His accuracy down the field is still among the very, very best in the NFL. And that's how Malik Neighbors can finish from kind of a frustrating low end wide receiver 1 to somebody that can kind of compete there for top 3, top 4, top 5 scoring at the position.
And on a weekly basis, that gives him legit spike week potential. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
talked about how brutal the situation was last year, and he still had 3 top 3 scoring overall weeks. at the wide receiver position. Now, we talked about this with Ashton Genty of the team overall, not scoring a whole bunch of points. That is also the downside here with the New York Giants, at least going into the season. They're projected for the third fewest points in the NFL. So we'll see what happens. That obviously doesn't always come into fruition. The league shocks Vegas and company in terms of bouncing these projections. But I'm excited for my league neighbors to hopefully, like, at least the Giants, they might not have hit a home run in the Matthew Stafford trade, for example, but they gave themselves like every opportunity that if plan A doesn't work, then they can at least go to plan B, and that can stabilize them enough versus truly the floor falling out from underneath them last season.
And Plan C and Jameis might be the best outcome
That's
from Malik
true.
Neighbors out of all of them, man. Like, this is gonna be crazy. Yeah.
Okay, if he is your 11th ranked player, then I'll give mine, and that is Nico Collins, another guy, and this might be a flag plant statement, I think has a chance of being the overall wide receiver one this year. I mean, from a true wide receiver talent perspective, he should be viewed as a top 10 talent at the position. He has flair, he has strength, he's an incredible athlete, he's dynamic after the catch, he's just too powerful in tight window targets. Again, we're dealing with like small samples here because it was a roller coaster for the Texans last year, but in the opening 5 games, I believe he was a wide receiver 3 in points per game. We know he then dealt with a hamstring issue, and then he still finished as the wide receiver 7 in points per game for the rest of the season. Uh, this comes from, I believe, the great Ian Hartitz. Nico Collins is just one of 4 wide receivers to average 2.5 yards per route in both 2023 and 2024. The only others, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nakua, and AJ Brown. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the world will believe in Nico Collins as an alpha talent if he plays in a full 17 games because he is a true superstar.
Yeah, and his 11 healthy games, averaged 94 yards, 9.1 targets. They throw him screens, and then he also is one of the best downfield, receivers
Sweet
in the
combo.
game. Yeah, I think he's probably the 3rd best wide receiver in the NFL. It's Jamar Chase,
Woo!
Travis Jefferson. I think it's probably Nico Collins, man. Like, he's amazing at everything. I think that CJ Stroud's gonna feel way more comfortable just with a new game plan, just better protection up front, less, like, immediate pressures in his faith. Yeah, I have no bad notes on Nico Collins. Like, the fact that he's, like, my 12th overall player is just a sign of how healthy this is, like, and this kinda gets into my discussion of, like, where do you wanna draft? Like, I kinda like being on this side of the board. If you get 2 of these guys that we're talking about, like, these like, Nico Collins, like, to me, is, like, typically, like, a profile that you would get, like, at 5th, 6th overall, in your average, fantasy season. Like, the fact that he's 12th overall just, like, shows you how, healthy and young, some of the new, incoming talent is, at the positions.
This sounds like a simple statement, but I'm going to make it anyways. From a fantasy standpoint, targeting players in offenses led by someone who has coached with Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay in the past has legit been a cheat code. We can
Yep.
talk about those 2 offenses in the Rams and the 49ers. We've talked previous seasons about the Miami Dolphins and have already on this list. We can talk about Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals, Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. Like the list goes on and on and on. Nick Caley, I believe, is a name this year that is going to make his mark early and often as the new
Hmm.
play caller for this team. And it's not just working with Sean McVay, it's also working with freaking Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels as the tight ends coach of the New England Patriots. The offensive line is a major question mark. I don't think from a pass protection issue, it can get any worse last year, even if you lost a name. And I would say name in what Laramie Tunsil played like last year. Again, they are doing everything they can from like 10 players that can maybe
Yeah.
start on an NFL team and just hopefully finding the 5 best and using that on a weekly basis. And
Yep.
that just improves like the environment for everyone to launch off of. Nico Collins, get 17 games with CJ Stroud
Mhm.
and Nick Caley. And again, this could be a top 3, top 2, or overall top 1 scorer of the position. Why not have him like as a Julio Jones producer this year? Why can't
I
that
know.
happen?
No, yeah, I can totally see it, man. Like, I think I need to move him up a couple spots here,
Oh,
so,
okay.
he's too
Well,
damn
let's
good.
close out our top 12 before recapping that list before moving on. My 12th player, as previously mentioned, is Devon Achan. Who is your 12th overall player? Was it Nico Collins?
It's Nico Collins.
Okay, so why don't we go through 1 through 12 and just do a quick reset. Go 1 through 12 for you right now.
I got Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb second, Saquon Barkley, Puka Nacua fourth. That's one of my flag plants there. Jameer Gibbs fifth, Bijan Robinson sixth, Justin Jefferson seventh, Christian McCaffrey at eight, and that might go up as we get some positive injury news there. Devon Achane's ninth, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, and Nico Collins. What a first round, man.
My top 12: Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson 2, Saquon 3, CMC 4, Jameer Gibbs 5, CeeDee Lamb 6, Justin Jefferson 7, Puka Nacua 8, Ashton Genty 9, Malik Neighbors 10, Nico Collins 11, and Devon Achan 12. We have three more names apiece because if you're drafting at the turn, I know all of you want to know who to select next. So who's your 13th overall player?
Brian Thomas Jr. He's going to be one of the best
Ooh.
wide receivers in the NFL. Even just last year, from week 12 on, the only wide receiver with more half PPR points was Jamar Chase. By the way, Brian Thomas did that with Mac Jones at quarterback and Doug Peterson at head coach here. We talk about Liam Cohen and how much he would scheme things up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brian Thomas, by the end of the year, was just running like some screens. They would give him some touches behind the line of scrimmage in the sweep game. They would do some shallow crosses where he would take off, and then he would just like beat press man coverage on slants. He's phenomenal, like one of the very, very best players on these post routes, these go routes, these big pylons. I'm looking for kind of weaknesses in his game, and a lot of it last year was just zone coverage. I think that's something that you improve on as your understanding in the NFL continues to grow. That's what we're going to see in year two from Brian Thomas. So, man, if like Travis Hunter like is playing a little bit more corner than we wanted to, like this ball is going to Brian Thomas. I think even if Travis Hunter's out there, the ball should go his way because he's going to be one of the very best, and he already has.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is my 13th player. Brian Thomas is my 14th player. We saw Chris Godwin score as the wide receiver 4 in points per game under Liam Cohen. Mike Evans scores the wide receiver 8 in points per game under Liam Cohen. As you said, Brian Thomas Jr. was the wide receiver 8 in points per game from week 10 on when Mac Jones was the starting quarterback. He had a 33.5% target share during that time. And I think people are acting like, well, he didn't do it with Trevor Lawrence. Well, first, he was a rookie. And if you remember back, it wasn't like the cleanest training camp for Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Things got progressively better as the season went along. And as you said, a big part of that was I think they realized that he could do just more than the slot fades, and he
Yep.
really dominated at in college. So that lined up with the second half of the season. He was still the wide receiver 18 in points per game with Trevor Lawrence last year. If we're talking about flag plants, this Jacksonville Jaguars team is that for me this year. I think Trevor Lawrence is finally going to get an warranted conversation as a top 10 quarterback in the league. And I just think that Liam Cohen is one of the true best play designers across the National Football League. And being able to do that with Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr., and all the other guys, but especially those two focal points, there's a lot of fun stuff that Cohen is going to manufacture on a weekly basis.
He was a wide receiver 6 in yards per route, and he was an early declare rookie. Like that's impressive stuff.
Okay, who's your 14th player?
This is where I got Derrick Henry. Last year,
Love
he
it.
was half PPR's RB2, career best, 6.1 yards per touch. Who could have seen that coming when you're playing behind and right next to Lamar Jackson? You see the yards before contact numbers go way up. That's because he's standing next to Lamar Jackson out there. So, yeah, we're probably not going to see quite as many touchdowns. It's hard to repeat that, but at the same exact time, it's the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens project for the most points in the NFL. Last year, he was a third overall player in half PPR points over replacement per game. So me ranking him at 14th overall in half PPR is already baking in all of the regression that you would need to do. Age concerns. I watched the tape. I'm not sure if I necessarily saw them. He
Hey,
looks good in
Liam.
the offseason. Like, yeah. 95% of his team carries inside the 5 yard line. So
Yeah, like we can list all these things with Saquon Barkley at 400 plus touches, and no one's repeated that mark since LaDainian Tomlinson. Okay, Saquon's also a Hall of Fame talent like LT is. And then we can also write the regression and all that stuff for Derrick Henry. He's going
yeah.
to be a Hall of Fame talent as well. Sometimes these players just break the mold in comparison to their peers that aren't special specimens like these guys are. Uh, I think it is an interesting conversation to have in comparison to Saquon. I mentioned all those long touchdowns that he had, and people with the Eagles always get concerned that, Jalen Hurts dominates all the workload because he's a mobile quarterback inside the 5 yard line, especially with the tush push. Derrick Henry owns that area. owns that area with the Baltimore Ravens. Inside the 5-yard line last year, he owned 94.7% of the team's carries. The next closest in the league was 82.6. 9 of his 13 rushing touchdowns resulted in that area of the field. He was also third in the NFL in percent of teams carries inside the 10-yard line. So to me, that allows for a eighth consecutive season of double digit touchdowns
Oh
to
yeah.
be repeatable because it's a really good offense as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy and this offensive line continues to play at a high level. Because when you get close to the end zone, that is Derrick Henry territory. And who's going to stop him? Absolutely nobody.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the NFL has a clear answer for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson right now.
Right. Now, the other point of this, though, and it's why it maybe didn't work at all times with Tennessee, is he doesn't catch passes. So if the Ravens like do decline and he's having to work in negative scripts over and over and over again, then he's just not as useful as some of these other running backs that we have talked about
Yep.
earlier. But you and I don't expect the Ravens to fall off a cliff like that.
No, I can actually see the Ravens being the best team in football this year. In
Right.
fact,
That is
if I
more
was doing
likely.
Super Bowl predictions right now, that would probably be my guess.
Yeah. So he is my 15th player. So we close it out with your 15th player. Who is it?
Man, I kept going back and forth, like, some of the names that I did not have that were close. Drake London, AJ Brown,
16th for me.
yeah, Lad McConkey, these are kind of the other names. Tyreek Hill, also, if you just want to be like, "Hey, upside, we've seen this done before." I ultimately went back to Brock Bowers, talking about
Okay.
easily the best rookie tight end season of all time. He had 26 more receptions than the tight end 2, rookie all time, 118 more receiving yards than the tight end 2 all time. I'm not expecting the same amount of targets, just because, like, I was looking at it, the Raiders were 4th in completions, 13th in receiving yards this last season because they were like always trailing. Their quarterbacks could only throw the ball 5 yards, so the ball continuously went to Brock Bowers. At the same time, I'm just such a huge believer in Geno Smith that it would be almost impossible for Brock Bowers to only have 5 touchdowns this next season. I think that he's a player that's going to go way up in yards per target at 7.8, just because he has a quarterback that really can like layer the ball in over the seam. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a little bit more diverse Brock Bowers in terms of his usage here. So especially in redraft where you have to like pick the tight end, like it's not like in best ball where like I just play the touchdown variance game and it selects
Right.
it for me. When I have to actually set my lineup, having someone like Brock Bowers who's projected for 8, 9, 10, 11 targets in that game feels really clean. So for a redraft, I actually think that Brock Bowers, his use case actually goes up here. So as we kind of like talk about best ball a little bit less and redraft a little bit more, I kind of want to reframe that Brock Bowers is even better selection there.
He's been one of the biggest fallers over the last 2 months. I mentioned that CMC's climbed 3 spots, Ashton Genji's fallen 3 spots. Brock Bowers has also fallen 3 spots. He was like a mainstay at the 1-2 turn
Yep.
early this summer, and now he's at the 207, I believe, drafting on July 8th. Maybe that changes at some point. I mean, I think Chip Kelly is just simply gonna use him as a pure wide receiver,
Yeah, he
and
is.
the Jordan Matthews stuff, remember when everyone believed Jordan Matthews was really good at football? Brock Bowers is just a few tiers above Jordan Matthews as a talent on an NFL field, and I think they're going to occupy the same area. So I do think he benefited last year from being like the only usable NFL player on that offense. No offense, Jacoby Myers, uh, but all the short receptions that he got from 0 to 9 yards,
Right.
that's where Aiden O'Connell was throwing the football. But again, if the team improves and you have Geno Smith throwing the football and the structure and everything is better, then that's also going to
Yep.
enhance the best talent on the team, which is Brock Bowers.
Yep, and we kinda have half PPR brain just because that's what Underdog is, but in full PPR, like, Brock Powers'
Yeah.
production, like, separates from the rest of the tight end group even more, so, like, that's something on my mind as well.
What if I told you in Scott Fishbowl, which is being drafted right now, Hayden, that that is tight end premium to the degree that tight ends get 3.5 points per reception?
So he's going first overall, right?
No, no, he's not.
Ugh,
He's not.
wow.
He's going like mid first round, sometimes early second, all that type of
Interesting.
stuff. So yeah, 3.5 points per Brock Bowers reception would be super nice. Okay, let's close out this conversation with a conversation that a lot of and a question a lot of people have. Where is your optimum draft slot in drafts right now for the 2025 season?
Well, I think, like, the players that we just talked about, like, to me, that's where, like, the teardrop is, like, around, like, 14th, 15th overall into that next tier. So, if you're picking 10th, 11th, 12th, you're getting 2 of these profiles that I think are firmly round 1 profiles. So, like, if I can get, like, Devon Achane and Nico Collins on the same team, like, to me, that's how you can really, vault up, and then also you get some of the elite wide receivers at the 3-4 turn too. So, I think there's a pretty big drop off between the early, round 2 and the late part of round 2.
Yes.
So unless I have Jamar Chase, then I kind of want to be picking at the back part of this and just pick two of these young guns and that could absolutely finish. I mean, how many times did we just say that we think this guy can be wide receiver 1 overall? We think this guy can be the RB1 overall. Like, take two of those chances and see if you can kind of land the plane.
I think I like the 8th pick or later because the 8th pick right now, again, is Christian McCaffrey, then it's Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, and then the rebound on the turn, you can maybe get Devon Achane. We talked about Drake London, and then it's that point that if you are the 6th overall selection, then Brock Bowers is your turn pick in the 2nd round, and after that, I believe there's a bit of a teardrop to Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Rashi Rice, Tyreek Hill,
Yeah.
T. Higgins. Like, those are kind of forced 2nd round selections versus, like, legit, arguably top 12 talents, top 15 talents like we've talked about for everyone else. So if you're able to pick, the turn is so much nicer this year than it was last year. But anywhere, I think from that 8th slot to the 12th slot, you're going to feel really good about your top 2 round picks. And then we get to round 3. And while everyone else is kind of forcing these running backs and wide receivers, which I like a few of those, if we're talking to Josh Jacobs and Chase Brown, at the end of round 3, you can just take one of the elite quarterbacks in
Yep.
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, even Jaden Daniels, and feel tremendous about that.
Yep. We see it the exact same way.
That's going to do it. Again, challenge to all of you. Play best ball underdog. Follow us on Instagram, UD Football Show, and hit that subscribe button. It is totally free to you. If you want to win your fantasy league, that is our entire goal, is to help you do that. So join us along the way and leave a thumbs up while you're there. Shout out to Weaves, Mosho, and Hayden. Up the villa, everyone. Talk to y'all soon. See ya.